Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from downtown Baton Rouge. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from our studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here at ESPN Baton Rouge. Jacob Beck, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. We got plenty to talk about over the next couple of hours. Full football weekend down here in South Louisiana. We'll react to LSU's win over Louisiana Tech. Saints come up just short against the Cardinals. Plenty of reaction to those two games. I got to tell you about all my picks from Friday in the Southeastern Conference. We'll do that at the top of the second hour, and might be humorous exercise, but we'll do it nonetheless. So lots and lots and lots to get to. Brian Kelly met with the media earlier today, gave a couple of injury updates. We'll talk about that. Saints had some unfortunate injury news that we got to earlier today as well. So we're loaded. Let's crank things up the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, LSU wins against Louisiana Tech on Saturday night, 23-7. And it was a pretty uninspiring effort. It was, quite frankly, a pretty boring football game. But the questions that arise from it, I think, are interesting. And the questions are all on the offensive side of the football, because the defense was sensational. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the offense is kind of where we have to start with this, because LSU only mustered 23 points on Louisiana Tech and had an early turnover, and the running game was inconsistent. You had some drives stall in the red zone, couldn't get the big plays going. It wasn't the type of effort that I certainly thought was coming. And I'll say this, I nailed the Clemson game. My analysis of that Clemson game pregame was, on point. My analysis of this Louisiana Tech game was pathetic and completely wrong in every way. I said all week long last week, LSU is going to come out in the home opener focused, locked in, and they are going to play exceptional from the word go on Saturday night. And the offense didn't. And so the question that arises, okay, what did we just watch on Saturday night then? Did we watch a team that was a little bit uninspired? Did we watch a team that was fired up, ready to roll against Clemson in a top 5 environment on the road and played great and then couldn't reach that level of focus and energy against Louisiana Tech, who's not any good? Did we watch a team that was too focused on the opener, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, and then didn't translate it to week 2? Did we watch a team that just didn't execute well? They just didn't play very well, but they will. Or did we watch a team that just isn't very good on offense? Any of those questions are a reasonable ask, and you can't get the information from Saturday's performance. You will learn as we move forward whether or not LSU is good on offense. Because now you have a sample size of 2 games, one against Clemson, where I could frame it very positive, but I could frame it kind of negatively. You scored 17 points. A lot of college football games are not won with 17 points at this point. LSU did not run the ball great at Clemson. They stuck to it, and they were consistent with their approach, but the productivity wasn't brilliant, and they didn't hit a bunch of deep balls. It was a lot of stuff around the line of scrimmage, and you got out of there because your defense was great, and you won 17-10. So now you come back and you play Louisiana Tech, and you just weren't great in this game either. You look at Nussmeier's effort, and it's 26 out of 41, 237 yards, threw a touchdown, had a pick, but nothing deep. You had the deep ball wide open on the first drive. Berrien Brown gets 4 steps on the Tech secondary, and Nussmeier just underthrew it. That's a guy with plenty of arm. He just made a bad throw. And then after that, you didn't get anything really down the field. But that's not the issue. The issue is not in the passing game. The issue is in the running game. And if you look at it just based on the stats, if you just look at the stats, you would say the running game was okay. You ran it 34 times. You had 128 yards, ran for a touchdown. That's okay at 3.8 yards per carry. Like, it's not good. You'd like it to be much better than that, but it's not a disaster. It wasn't like you ran it 34 times for 40 yards. You had 128 yards on the ground. But if you watched the game, you saw a running attack that was no good. You had Xavier Thomas on the jet sweep, bust it for 48, and that was good design, dynamic playmaker, great run. Awesome, good job. And you had Harlan Berry bust loose for a 43-yarder, which was really more just Harlan Berry making a guy miss and then using his speed to get to the outside. Wasn't executed flawlessly, but Harlan Berry's a dynamic player, so he got it done. And those two plays were really productive. And the other 32 runs were not. And Jake Hester and I have gone back and forth on this, and certainly it would be wise for you to listen to the NFL running back instead of me on what constitutes a good running game and what shortcomings are big in a running game. But I still maintain my belief that it's okay to say, well, you had 2 great runs, but you had 32 bad ones. And I don't think that makes a positive running game. I'm not saying take those runs away, but I am saying that if you're going to rely on just busting a couple of 45-yard runs, I would rather have a consistent ground game that gets 5, 6, 7, 11 a lot than 2, -1, -3, 3, 0, -1, 50. Like, that's not, to me, sustainable. What you want is a consistent ground game, and they didn't have it. For Caden Durham against a Conference USA team to have 13 carries and none of them go for more than 5 yards, and to finish the game with 13 carries and 29 yards rushing is awful. That's terrible. That's a terrible effort running the ball. Not Caden Durham's fault, the offense's fault. And I'm not here to tell you it's play calling. I'm not here to tell you the offensive line can't block. I'm not here to tell you how many guys were in the box on every running play. I'm telling you that the productivity was not good enough. And Brian Kelly gave his frustration on that on Saturday night after the game. He said, look, like our effort was good. Our productivity was not good enough. That's what he said. And I believe that. It's a concern of mine if you can't line up and knock Louisiana Tech out of the way. You ought to be able to line up and knock Louisiana Tech out of the way. Now, this is a overarching theme, not necessarily pointing to a specific play, but this was very obvious to me sitting in the press box watching the game. Louisiana Tech was not going to let LSU beat them deep in the passing. They were not going to let LSU hit the big play, and they played a big shell defense for a lot of the game. Not every snap, but a lot of the game. And theoretically, that should allow you some room to run the football underneath that. And I just don't think that LSU found it significantly enough. This team's never going to have an identity rooted completely in running the football. They're going to be an explosive passing team. They're going to be an efficient passing team. They need to run the ball as a complement to that. And they just didn't do it in this game. And that's frustrating. I thought a perfect encapsulation of this was LSU's final 3 plays of the night. You got a goal-to-go situation from inside the 5-yard line. You handed the ball off 3 times, once to Caleb Jackson, twice to Harlan Berry, and you could not punch the ball in against Louisiana Tech in the 4th quarter from inside the 5. That is no good. It's no good. And it's a problem for this team and this program over the last 3 years that you are not good at running the ball when teams know you're trying to run the ball. And that is a hallmark and a characteristic of championship football teams. And LSU, as a program for 3 years, has not had it. You had Jaden Daniels, who could wave a magic wand and make people miss and run the football in. But you have not been able to, quote-unquote, traditionally pound the ball into the end zone from short yardage for 3 years. And that's frustrating. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that I'm certain that this team can't do that moving forward. I am leaving the door open for a little bit of a lack of motivation. I'm leaving the door open for Braylon Moore going out and that throwing a wrench in thing because he's your best offensive lineman. I'm leaving the door open for improvement over this team over the course of the next 10 ball games. But in leaving that door open, I'm also acknowledging that what you saw on Saturday wasn't good enough. Nussmeier wasn't great. He was inaccurate. That is going to get fixed. He's a great quarterback, and he's going to throw the ball better than he did on Saturday. I'm not concerned that LSU is dead last in the SEC in explosive passing plays. I've seen Barian Brown do that for 3 years at Kentucky. I've seen Chris Hilton do that when he's been healthy. I've seen Aaron Anderson do it last year. I've seen Garrett Nussmeier make those throws. I watched Nick Anderson highlights of him doing it 2 years ago at Oklahoma. Like, I know there is explosiveness in that passing game that will come out. I know that Garrett Nussmeier will throw the ball more accurately than he did on Saturday night. Those I have no concern about whatsoever. It was a bad night Saturday. I don't have concern about it moving forward. I don't know that they're going to be able to run the ball, and that's the concerning thing. That is the concerning thing, absolutely. So these games happen every year. It happens every single year. We don't remember it. We don't talk about it. It's not brought up at the bar or at family dinner when LSU struggles with a non-conference game, but it happens to every team. The 2007 team was awesome. They were national champions. They went to Tulane on a Saturday morning and just looked completely lifeless. They're a national championship team. The 2011 team, on the greatest run we'd ever seen to that point, they played Western Kentucky in November, and they were up 7 points at halftime. Like, just, it was a listless, lifeless effort. I've talked to Brandon Taylor about that game a few times. But no one remembers it because you remember going to Tuscaloosa and winning, and you remember blowing out all the teams in the SEC, and you remember the SEC championship win, and certainly, unfortunately, the national championship. But you don't remember the Western Kentucky game. It was awful. Every year, LSU runs into games like this. I mean, you saw the 2019 team kind of sleepwalk through a non-conference game. It happens every single year, and it happens to almost every single team. So this will likely just be a small footnote in whatever this year comes. It could be a harbinger of bad things to come in the ground game. I don't know what it is yet. And we'll get those answers as we move forward. But it was disappointing to watch LSU offensively. Brian Kelly talked today about how statistically it wasn't that bad. You outgained Louisiana Tech by 211 yards. You out first downed them 27-12. You held them on third downs to an anemic rate of 3 out of 13. You converted 9 of 16 on third down. You controlled time possession 36-23. They didn't score, but for right at the end when you busted an assignment with your second team defense in there, like, statistically it looks okay on paper until you look at the scoreboard. But if you watched it, it was listless, it was lifeless, it was not very good on the offensive side. The defense was very, very good, and I want to talk about that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
LSU beat Louisiana Tech 23-7 on Saturday night. We lamented the offense's shortcomings there, but the defense really held up its end of the bargain. That's a game that LSU could have been in a dogfight in if the defense did not bring great effort, but the Tigers absolutely did. Held Louisiana Tech to 154 total yards. One of my favorite stats from this game is that LSU held Louisiana Tech under 100 yards passing and under 100 yards rushing. Tech ran for 58 yards in the game and threw for 96 yards in the game. Only had 12 first downs. Only had the ball for 23 minutes and 8 seconds. It was really a cumulative effort from the LSU defense, and it was good at every level. West Weeks led the Tigers in tackles with 10, but Devon Keys was right there behind him with 9. Then you had Tamarcus Cooley from the secondary with 5, Jack Pyburn on the defensive front with 4. Then you had a group of 3 tackles with Jamari Butler, A.J. Halsey, Whit Weeks, Ahmad Bro, and then Walter Mathis, who's played a little bit for LSU as a freshman defensive lineman. They were all over the field and did not allow a quick-moving Louisiana Tech offense. Tech was just trying to get the ball out really quickly to make sure that the pass rush couldn't get home from LSU. Still, LSU did notch a couple sacks and had 5 tackles for loss, but they just kept everything in front of them and were really, really sure in their tackling. I thought it was an excellent effort from LSU start to finish, and this defense just looks really, really good. If you keep this in mind, Louisiana Tech did not attempt a snap in the red zone. They never got inside the 20. They had the one coverage bust that produced the touchdown down the right sideline, and LSU coaching staff was not super happy with that. But they could not move the ball really at all. You look at their drive chart in this game, they punted on 9 of their 11 possessions. They went 3 plays, 9 yards punt, 4 plays, 22 yards punt, 8 plays, 26 yards punt, 5 plays, 17 yards punt. Then they had the ball right before the half, took a knee. But then they punted on their first 4 drives of the second half, 34 yards, -3 yards, 4 yards, -8 yards. Just nothing doing whatsoever for the Louisiana Tech offense. And that is this LSU defense backing up the excellent performance in game 1 without a letdown in game 2. This was one that was pretty easy to call. Louisiana Tech had a tough time moving the ball consistently against Southeastern the week prior. They scored 24 points in that game, but they had 7 of them on a scoop and score that went the other way, 80 yards. So the offense only mustered 17 points against Southeastern. You figure this was going to be a difficult matchup for LSU, but the guys for Louisiana Tech against LSU, but the guys really stepped up and really played very, very well. I think LSU is covering better than it has really since 2019, I think. Tech didn't try to do too much down the field, but they only completed 15 of their 26 throws. And when you consider how short the throws were, to have 15 completions equal 96 yards, like they were throwing things really close to the line of scrimmage, and LSU was still right there in a position to make plays on the football, which is just something we haven't seen a ton of over the last couple of years. They were credited with 5 pass breakups. Ashton Stamps had a couple of those. It was really good to see him get on the field. I think that he's got some ability. I told you a lot of August that I thought he had a good camp, but P.J. Woodland beat him out. And Mansour Delane is showing that he's the number 1 corner on this team. He had a pass breakup in the game. Stamps, of course, dropped the interception late in the game that would have been a nice touch for him. He does not have one in his 2 years as a starting cornerback for LSU. Had an opportunity to have one there and didn't make it happen. But LSU stuck with the Louisiana Tech wide receivers really all over the field all night. And I love the LSU defensive balance through 2 weeks. I wrote a story about this called Statistically Speaking up at LouisianaSports.net this morning that just kind of highlighted all of the positives with this LSU defense, and it's everybody making an impact. It's an entire group of 11, which is really deep as like 20 guys that are contributing. No one on the defense has more than 13 tackles on the year. Harold Perkins is the only defender that has multiple tackles for loss, but 10 players have been credited for a TFL. 8 players have broken up a pass. 6 Tigers have combined for LSU's 4 sacks. 8 Tigers have a hurry. It's a ton of guys that are making plays. And I'm not gonna like harp on holding a bad Louisiana Tech defense down, but I will tell you that, like, you watched LSU's defense last year allow Nichols to bust huge plays. There was none of that in this game. None of it. You're not letting guys get loose and make big plays. You're not busting assignments, and you're making plays. They're not necessarily relying on a ton of havoc, which I know Blake Baker wants to create. They're not having a ton of tackles for loss, a ton of sacks. But you're talking about only allowing 1 play of 30-plus yards. There are only 9 teams in the country that have done better than that have 0. So it's a defense that the players are telling us they're comfortable in. Brian Kelly alluded to that comfort today in his press conference, that in year 2 under Blake Baker, which was a big step forward at Missouri, has been to this point a big step forward for LSU. And you kind of wondered if LSU would validate their effort against Clemson against Louisiana Tech on Saturday, and they absolutely did. It's a tenacious, deep, and talented defense that I think looks really, really good. So if you want to look at some more numbers for LSU on the statistics on this defense, you can do that over at LouisianaSports.net. It was good to see A.J. Halsey out there for an entire game. It was good to see LSU rotating guys on the defensive front consistently, which they've done now for 2 weeks. And then it was good to see the secondary play the way that they did. I thought that LSU did a great job, again, against a bad team, but that can be a difficult it can be a difficult thing to get your mental focus ready for, because it's kind of a boring offense where they're just flipping the ball out to the outside and trying to run quickly and not do too much down the field. But LSU never buckled until the very end when they put their second team out there. They would have potentially had a shutout. They're in the top 10 in scoring defense in the country after 2 weeks. So good stuff from the Fighting Tiger defense back on Saturday night. They've got a whole new challenge against Florida coming up this week, and we'll certainly talk about the Gators as we move forward. We'll talk about the Gators in the first segment of hour number 2, because that was a poor effort by Billy Napier's squad back on Saturday in the Swamp. I'll get to some injury news for LSU in the second hour, but I'll tell you what we learned today. I want to talk about the impact that it's going to have on this team in hour number 2. But Brian Kelly did meet with the media today. He did confirm what we reported on Sunday at LouisianaSports.net, that Trey'Dez Green has a sprained MCL. He was on crutches after the game and is not considered a season-ending injury. They're going to keep him progressing through this week. He'll be questionable at this point for this week against Florida, but it's not something that should keep him out more than a couple of weeks at the absolute worst. So that's great news for LSU. And then Braylon Moore, who went out on the first play of the game, that looked bad. I was actually watching Braylon Moore when it happened. He got rolled up on and saw the injury right there in front of my eyes. He went into the locker room, had the x-ray. It was negative. Came back out on the field, tried to do some things, snapping the ball. Just didn't feel like it was a good idea to go back in the ball game. So at halftime, he put sweats on and never went back into the game. DJ Chester played the rest of the game at center. Brian Kelly said it's an ankle injury. He said it was not a high ankle sprain that requires a tightrope surgery. Y'all are familiar with that. The most famous instance of that with LSU football is Tua Tagovailoa in 2019, had the tightrope surgery and then played a couple weeks later against LSU in that great game in Tuscaloosa. But if it's a high ankle sprain, they do have a surgery. They can go in there and tighten it up, that tightrope, and after a couple of weeks, you're good to go. They did not feel like Braylon Moore's injury was significant enough to warrant that type of surgery. So they're just going to use some rest and some treatment. They're going to try to get him on the practice field on Tuesday of this week, see how he feels on Wednesday. They said he's questionable right now. They could upgrade him to probable as the week goes on. I think it's ambitious to put him out there against Florida, but if he feels good, he'll play. If he doesn't play against Florida, you would probably sit him against Southeastern, and then he'd be ready to go for Ole Miss. But right now, barring some kind of setback for Braylon Moore, you would absolutely consider him a very likely player against Ole Miss in 3 weeks. Potential that he could go this week against Florida. So when you see those two guys come off the field, you look at the injuries on the replay and you see them getting rolled up on, you fear the absolute worst in that instance with significant knee injuries. Moore's is an ankle. He's okay. Trey'Dez is a sprain of the MCL. He may take a little bit longer, but all in all, the MRIs that those two guys got on Sunday are positive reports for LSU. So that's a very, very good thing as you move into start of conference play coming up on Saturday. All right, that's a look at LSU for the first 30 minutes. If you want LSU coverage, you can find it at LouisianaSports.net. Certainly all my stuff as well online at Hunt on LSU. You can find that at YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. We'll switch over to the Saints here. Got our auction segment. We got a couple injuries, obviously, there to talk about here in 15 minutes with the folks over there at Auctioner. Still got to talk SEC football, and I want to talk about those injuries a little bit further in the second hour when we see what LSU's going to do without those guys, as you saw them kind of try to navigate that a little bit on Saturday. But what would it look like without Braylon Moore and Trey'Dez Green on Saturday? We'll talk about that in the hour number 2. Let's take a time out. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Hoodats, who got off to an 0-1 start on Sunday. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group. HighlandIG.com is that website. It is still storm season. It's been quiet around here. That's a very good thing. But do you know that your insurance policy is ready should something happen in the Gulf? If not, let the Highland Insurance Group audit your policy for free. Free. It doesn't cost you anything for them to make sure that your coverage is right. I know a lot of business owners. I was in the insurance business. I know a lot of folks just flipped to that back page of the proposal. What's the premium? When's it coming out? Okay. But you need to know what the fine print says. What are the exclusions? What's your wind hail deductible? Is it a named storm deductible? Do you have co-insurance penalties? How did you evaluate your business, your buildings? All those things are vital when a storm blows through. Not to mention cyber attacks, lawsuits, car accidents, umbrella limits, whatever the case may be. The Howard Insurance Group has a team of experts that just go through policies and make sure they're properly written. If you don't know whether or not your policy is properly written, contact Jonathan Carbo and his team at the Highland Insurance Group. They're based right here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out statewide. It's the Highland Insurance Group. You can find them online at highlandig.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Week is off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Busy Monday. A couple football games in the rearview mirror. LSU gets a win on Saturday night. Time to talk a little bit of Saints. New Orleans gets off to an 0-1 start, just coming up short against the Arizona Cardinals. Juwan Johnson had his hands on the football in the end zone with a chance to potentially tie that game or go for two and win it in the opener, but couldn't control the football off the ground, and the Saints come up short against the Cardinals after a fade route flies out of bounds to Chris Olave. You know, I'm not going to give a disclaimer before we start every single Saints game this year, but I'll start with one here. Generally our Saints breakdowns are going to be pretty much big picture because the minutia of the 2025 season is likely insignificant. Could the Saints make the playoffs? Sure. Am I projecting that right now? I'm not. I don't think the Saints are going to have a great team this year. But you need to see growth from the coach and young players. And sometimes that's going to come in losses, and sometimes it's going to come in wins. They're going to win some games. I said on Friday I thought they had a chance to compete in this game, and they did. Defense played well. You got great performances by some of your older players. Demario Davis was brilliant. Cam Jordan was brilliant. But ultimately, it wasn't quite enough to win the game. But they will win some games. In this game, two things stood out to me beyond the scoreboard. The first is this is Kellen Moore's first game as a head coach. His first time wearing that headset with those decision-making opportunities. And not using timeouts at the end of the first half is unacceptable. Unacceptable. When the Cardinals get first and goal at the 5-yard line with 1:16 left and you've got 3 timeouts, you must call one immediately after the first play. You must. With 3 timeouts and 1:16 to go, you can get the ball back with a minute to play. A minute is an eternity in the NFL. Did you watch the game last night between the Ravens and Bills? A minute is an hour. You've got to call timeouts. You're not at that when they get into a goal to go situation, they can't run clock. They only get 3 more plays and then a fourth to either kick it or go for it. Like they can't further the drive anymore. So you got to preserve the time. That's a wasted possession. In a league where every point spread is 2.5, 4.5, every one. I realize this one was 6.5, but you get the point. Like, a possession is everything. And that could have made a huge difference in this game. Now, I realize there are going to be some people that go, well, Spencer Rattler is second-year quarterback. You don't want to force the issue there. You're in the game. And so you don't want to, maybe get a turnover late and then, Arizona scores a couple times before the half. And I don't want to hear any of that. This is the starting quarterback of an NFL football team who is not a rookie. Even if he was a rookie, I wouldn't want to hear it. But I certainly don't want to hear it for a second-year player. You ought to be able to manage yourself and with a minute to go, get yourself into field goal range. Field goal range is like the 40-yard line. Considering a kickoff, like you're talking about getting 40 yards in a minute, that's pretty doable. So I hated Kellen Moore, 1, not calling the timeouts, and then 2, getting asked about it on the way to the locker room and just having no answer whatsoever, just babbled through, yeah, I did a pretty good job bleeding the clock down. Bleeding the clock down, they bled the clock down because you didn't call a timeout. They can't bleed the clock down if you call timeout. So I didn't like that at all. It's his first game. It's not going to cost him the Super Bowl. If he learns from it, great. We'll be monitoring it. But he's the head coach now. You gotta know when to steal a possession there, and he had an opportunity to do it. The other one, and I think a lot of people immediately pin this on coaching. I'm more reluctant to do that in some instances, but the Saints had 13 penalties for 89 yards in this game. That is unacceptable. A lot of pre-snap penalties. Cesar Ruiz getting penalties. I'm not going to blame coaches oftentimes for penalties. I'm not going to blame coaches for holding penalties. I'm not going to blame coaches for pass interference. There are instances where I'm not even going to blame coaches for delay a game. If you got a wide receiver that can't get set and you're not in the proper formation, okay, well, let's talk about that. If you've got too many guys on the field, let's talk about that. There are instances where the coaches have certainly got to shoulder some blame. Sometimes you don't, but a lot of times the preparation is indicative of what the coach has done. And 13 penalties for 89 yards in an NFL game is just unacceptable. Cannot have that. Those are two big takeaways. Now let's get to some of the other things. Certainly, we got to talk quarterback, right? You got to talk about Spencer Rattler. And I thought he was okay. I mean, we're singing his praises in a big way if Juwan Johnson comes down with that play to help either tie the game or give you a chance to win it by going for two. And I would have gone for two if they scored. But that was a heck of a throw. It was a nice drive to get down there in that position. And it changes the narrative, I think, if he catches the ball. And that has nothing to do with what Spencer Rattler did. So I want to make sure that it's not. I want to make sure that we just analyze what he did. He was all right. And that would have been a great, great, great drive that capped if Johnson makes the catch. They got bailed out on an interception because of a penalty. And a lot of checkdowns. But checkdowns are okay. Checkdowns keep you on schedule. Checkdowns generally gain yards. And when you've got some guys that have made a career out of taking short throws and making them into bigger plays, like Alvin Kamara has, and certainly Chris Olave's had experience with that as well, I'm okay with checking the ball down some. The 13 points is not great on your home field against a decent Cardinals defense, but I thought he looked pretty poised, and I thought his play at the end of the game was pretty good. So for Rattler, I'd give him a B- in the game. I thought he did a pretty good job. Now, one thing that you would not get from the stat sheet that you would get just from the eyeball test watching the game, I loved what Kendre Miller looked like. Now, you look at the stat sheet, 5 carries, 24 yards, you're like, huh? Who cares? But if you watched it, there's some burst. There, you can see he's the guy they took with the draft pick, right? And I wrote Kendre Miller off last year because of the way that Dennis Allen handled him. And that was a mistake on my part because that seems like it was a Dennis Allen issue as much as it was a Kendre Miller issue. I'm not absolving Kendre Miller from coming to camp likely out of shape and getting hurt on the first rep. But beyond that, the coach didn't do him any favors. Kept him on IR when he was ready to go. Trashed him to the media. It was clear that Dennis Allen had an axe to grind with Kendre Miller, and that's gone now. And he's going to get a chance, and I thought he looked good in the game. We saw him in the preseason with a nice kick return. There's a burst there. There's an explosiveness there. I like what I've seen from Kendre Miller. The offensive line from the Saints, I did not like. Fuaga goes out. He's hurt. Ruiz just looks completely lost in the run game. It was an up and down day for Banks. It was an uneven effort from the offensive line, and that is going to hamper your ability to run the football. And the Saints running game was okay, 22 carries for 107 yards. That's good enough to win an NFL game. But it wasn't certainly dominant, and it wasn't the type of effort that I need from this offensive line if the Saints are going to be a functional offense this year, because you need the guys that you took really high picks on to be really good players. And I did not think it was a great day for the offensive line on Sunday afternoon in the Dome. Defensively, I saw a lot that I liked. I loved Demario Davis's play. I thought he was great. Couple tackles for loss, 9 stops. I thought Cam Jordan, sack and a half, probably could have been 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. That looked good. But that's the old guys. What about the young guys? And Kool-Aid's chasing Marvin Harrison Jr. around, and that's a hard thing to do. And he struggled doing it at some plays, but Harrison got loose a couple times. And then the worst news of the day was that Julian Blackmon is hurt and is out for the year with a torn labrum. That's a guy that you got late. You really think you found something there, potential young-ish piece to your team on the back end of the defense to pair with Reed, and now he's out for the year. So you're going to see more of Jordan Howden now. We'll see what that looks like. But I thought the defense played pretty well. Holding Arizona to 20 points is good enough to win a lot of the time. But Blake Grupe misses a field goal. You're not able to hold on late, and that's a huge bummer. Brian Brzee, hat tip on a ridiculously athletic play to block that field goal. I thought that was incredible.
He did that last year, too.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete. I mean, at that size, to do that was really, really good. Isaac Yiadom had his significant issues trying to cover as well. I want to see more from the young players on defense, but I thought overall, nice job by that group to hold the Cardinals to 20 points. Disappointing to lose late, but some good things, some things they've got to clean up and work on, and then obviously the injury news, which really sucks with Blackman going out. But look, it's a long season, and you're in the infancy of this rebuild. I want to see Kellen Moore make adjustments to his ability to get timeouts called properly. I want to see more from Spencer Rattler in terms of playmaking. But there's a lot to like about the game. Unfortunately, you come out on the wrong end and you're 0-1. Have San Francisco coming into the Dome coming up this week. But we'll talk a little bit more about the Saints as we move forward. Let's step aside. When we come back, we'll talk some injuries. Folks over at Auctioner. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is that website. Every car that is on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Tell you every single week, every single day, really, about America's best warranty. That's what they boast, and that's what they back up. You're talking about a powertrain warranty for 10 years, 100,000 mile, bumper to bumper, 5 years, 60,000 miles. That is industry leading there. But also enhanced 24/7 roadside assistance for 5 years or unlimited miles, complimentary scheduled maintenance for 3 years, 36,000 miles, and they make that maintenance valet, which is so convenient and just part of the experience of being a Genesis driver. Go by and see them, Airline at PQ. Test drive one of their vehicles. I highly recommend the GV80. It's their SUV. If you got a family, it's got enough room for you. So comfortable, drives so well, and it's not a HA top safety pick, which means it's one of the safest cars on the road. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge, Airline at PQ, or online at genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
All right, closing up hour number one here on this Monday. Sports Health, presented by Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Got a chance to chat with Dr. Jeffrey Hogan, sports medicine there at Auctioner. He's an expert in non-operative management of orthopedic, musculoskeletal, and sports injuries. He joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Dr. Hogan, how are you?
I'm doing well, hon. How are you today? Thanks for having me.
Doing quite well. It's our pleasure. I know the theme of the day over at LSU was injuries, and certainly we don't talk about specific cases, but I just want your general knowledge on some of the things that we saw back on Saturday. You know, high ankle sprain is a nasty word in the sports world. I know the tightrope procedure has been something that's kind of been in vogue in recent years, so that's not something that LSU decided to do in Braylon Moore's case. But what can you tell us about the severity of ankle sprains?
Yeah, ankle sprains kind of, I mean, there's a pretty wide range of them, but like you were talking about getting into those high ankle sprains, that's when we start dealing with injuries to the ligaments between the lower bones of the leg, the tibia and the fibula. And you get a pretty nasty stretch and sometimes tearing of those ligaments and quite a bit of pain, instability at times. And it can make it a lot more difficult to deal with than just kind of what we would consider like a standard sprain.
Does the fact that LSU decided not to do surgery, is that an indication of the severity of the injury? Is it more of an indication of where it is?
It's hard to tell. Again, there's not knowing the specifics of the case with it, but it could be both. It could be kind of dealing with the severity of it, or kind of how much of that ligament is involved. There's a lot of factors that kind of go into play. With that, other timing is, consider where we're in that season. You got quite a bit of time left. That may be playing a role as well.
No question. We're chatting with Dr. Jeffrey Hogan from Ochsner. MCL sprain, that was the diagnosis that they gave for Trey'Dez Green. What can you tell us about those injuries?
Thankfully, that's all it was, just an isolated MCL. We're looking pretty good. Those are, if you're going to have a ligament injury, that's not the worst one to have. Usually we're looking at like a grade 1 or a grade 2, just kind of stretch or some partial tearing of that ligament on the inside of the knee. And most of the time that's not requiring surgery to fix. It's a period of putting them in a good brace, getting them some good rehab. Hopefully within 6 weeks, we're looking pretty good at return to play. That's kind of typically what we're looking at for a grade 2 type injury. But again, I'm not sure quite where his is at.
Right, I know, and everyone I think is aware that we were not speaking in specifics to cases. We're not going to have doctors come on and speak about things that happen on the table, but just in generalities. In with these injuries, more often than not, are you looking at pain tolerance, or are you looking at the actual functionality of the legs?
These two both are definitely more about the functionality. You need kind of the stability of those joints when they're out on the field, when they're running, cutting, making their maneuvers. Every player is dealing with some degree of pain almost at all times. So pain tolerance certainly comes into it, but we really want to stress the importance of the stability of that joint, especially at their positions.
We appreciate a little bit of your expertise there. Exciting stuff coming up this weekend. The Cleveland Browns doctor coming down to Baton Rouge to speak. I know you all are excited about having him down.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to start kind of getting some guest lecturers regularly around here. So Dr. Joseph Kelsey coming down from Cleveland to help impart his wisdom on us, talk about kind of the latest innovations with wearable technology in sports medicine and some of the advances in orthobiologic treatments we have to get these sports injuries to heal faster, safer, and get people back.
Wearables. Can you go a little bit more in detail about what that would entail?
There's a lot of different things, whether it's, something you're wearing on your wrist, tracking heart rate, something you're kind of more on your chest, like a lot of our athletes are doing, that you can get a lot more kind of biologic data just in real time, where you're looking at heart rates, you're looking at speeds, you can track sleep patterns, you can really track a lot of different things. And so it's about how we use that information properly, and where it's important, and how we can implement that into injury prevention programs, and then kind of injury treatment and rehabilitation programs as well. My personal, focus on concussions. We're trying to figure out different ways we can use wearables to, one, prevent concussions, but also trying to figure out how to get people kind of safely cleared from those as well.
Dr. Hogan, we certainly appreciate some time. Have a great week.
Thank you. Y'all too.
He is Dr. Jeffrey Hogan at Sports Health, presented by Ochsner, Andrews Orthopedics, and Sports Medicine Institute. It's still hot outside. Folks at Ochsner want to remind everyone that if you experience any sort of symptoms that may be related to heat exhaustion, to stop physical activity immediately. Remember to hydrate for sure before and during physical activity. Folks at Ochsner are always looking out for us here in the Baton Rouge area, and we appreciate them giving us some time every other Monday for our sports health segment. So, look, again, and I want to stress this because it's important. Like, we are not going to have the folks from Ochsner come on and speak to individual cases with injuries, but I do think that there is great information there. And for him to say, I'm not talking specifically about Trey'Dez, but like if you're going to have a knee issue, like the MCL strained ligament, that's one you're looking at that is less severe. And it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, it's not your knee that hurts, but like, hey, that's good to hear that. And then you heard Brian Kelly's update earlier today that they, that they have him questionable for this week, but they're hoping that progresses throughout the week. I think that football coaches are a little aggressive with their reports that way, that they're always getting close to coming back to the field. I'm not saying that he's out there like out and out lying like Les Miles often did about injuries, but I think that when you were in the stadium on Saturday, if you were watching and you saw Braylon Moore come out and then you saw Trey'Dez Green come out in a leg brace and on crutches, you fear the worst. We've seen enough football where you go, well, lower leg injury, knee injury, like that's could be the year, and it's week 2. So to hear that neither of those is going to be a season-long injury and that their return is in potentially Braylon Moore's case pretty quick, that's good news to hear, and we appreciate Dr. Hogan for coming on and giving us a little bit of information here on this Monday. Fast moving first hour. Talked about LSU on the defensive side of the football. Talked about LSU on the offensive side of the football. You can find both of those at Hunt on LSU, wherever you find your podcast, certainly on YouTube as well. Also broke down Saints and Cardinals, talked about them at the bottom of the hour. You can catch that at Hunt on Saints. Ross Jackson got a lot of news up at LouisianaSports.net, currently on the Black and Gold, so I invite you to go check all of that out on demand. We got a lot to do in hour number 2 as well. When we come back after SportsCenter, we're going to talk about my picks on Saturday. Jacob Beck was taunting me via text message on Saturday.
I don't know if I'd say taunting. I don't know about that.
Outwardly taunting.
That may be exaggerated.
And mocking my picks on Saturday.
It was deserved. Let's just be honest.
Okay, well, look, we'll talk about it at the top of the hour. We also want to talk about what LSU does from an injury perspective with this Trey Green and Braylon Moore situation. Also, Denton Day, SiriusXM College Football Radio, going to be with us at 2:30. So we'll step aside, get you some national headlines, news of the day, which I'm sure will be lots of NFL. And then we will get back to some college football with our thoughts on the SEC. Got to talk about Sunbelt Billy, what happened in Gainesville. Come back with us on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. SwingEasyGCBR.com. Brand new here in Baton Rouge. If you're into golf, no matter your skill level, Swing Easy Golf Club is an awesome spot for you. You can work on your game no matter the weather conditions outside. If it's 1,000 degrees or if it's raining or if it's 25 degrees, it gets dark at 5 o'clock like we'll get to in December and January. The bays at Swing Easy Golf Club, always ready to rock. And you can work on your game there with the driving range mode, or it's a great place to hang out and socialize. Grab a beer, grab a glass of wine, hit some golf shots, play Pebble Beach, play Cypress Point, play St. Andrews, one of those famous golf courses in the world right there on their simulators. It's a great place, a great environment, and an awesome spot to hang out or work on your golf game. They're Segan at Perkins at Swing Easy Golf Club. You can find them online at swingeasygcbr.com. Swing Easy Golf Club, swingeasygcbr.com.